I used to work for someone worth over $1 billion. Not in theory, not from a book, not from watching interviews or reading articles. I was there every day in the room where decisions were made. I saw how this person lived, how they spent, how they handled money in ways that would surprise you. And the thing that shocked me most wasn't what they bought. It wasn't the cars. It wasn't the properties. It wasn't the private travel or the art on the walls, or any of the things you'd expect. It was what they didn't buy, it was what they said no to, and it was the almost supernatural calm they had about money in moments where most people would completely fall apart. This video is going to change how you think about wealth, not because I'm going to tell you to budget better or cut your Netflix subscription, but because I'm going to show you what money actually looks like when someone has more of it than they could ever spend, and what that reveals about everything the rest of us get wrong. Let me take you back to day one. When I first walked into this person's workspace, I was ready for excess. I had this mental image built from years of seeing what wealthy people supposedly look like on social media. The gold everything, the massive screens, the absurd luxury on display at every turn. What I actually walked into was a quiet room, clean, thoughtfully furnished, but not loud about it. Quality materials, good wood, comfortable seating, proper lighting, but nothing that screamed, "Look how much this cost." There was no TV playing financial news in the background, no ticker tape, no wall of screens showing stock prices. There was a desk, a chair, some books, and a window. And that simplicity told me more about wealth in the first 30 seconds than anything I had read or watched in my entire life. Because here's what I realized standing in that doorway. This person had nothing to prove, not to me, not to anyone who walked into that room, not to the world. They had reached a level of financial security where the performance, the showing off, the signaling, the look what I have behavior was completely irrelevant. And that's when the first uncomfortable question hit me. If someone with essentially unlimited money doesn't feel the need to display it, why do I? Why do any of us? Why is so much of what we buy really just a message we're sending to other people about who we want them to think we are? I didn't have an answer that day, but the question never left me. Most of us, and I include myself in this, the person I was before this experience, are engaged in a constant, exhausting performance. We buy things not because we need them, not even because we particularly want them, but because of what they communicate. The brand of your shoes says something. The car in your driveway says something. The neighborhood you live in says something. The restaurant you check into on social media says something. And the audience for all this performance, they're not even watching. They're too busy performing for their own imaginary audience. It's a theater where everyone is on stage and no one is in the seats. The billionaire I worked for had walked out of that theater entirely, and the piece that came with that exit was the foundation for everything else I'm about to tell you. Now, I need to be clear about something. This person was not cheap. They spent money, real money, significant amounts of it. But the way they spent was fundamentally different from how most people, even high earners, approach spending. Most of us make purchasing decisions emotionally and then justify them logically after the fact. We see something, we feel a pull, we experience a rush of desire or excitement or need, and then our brain, brilliantly, instantly, constructs a rational argument for why this purchase makes sense. I deserve this. It's on sale, so I'm actually saving money. I'll use it every day. You only live once. I'll start saving next month. The decision has already been made. The logic is just paperwork. This person operated in the exact reverse. Logic first. Emotion acknowledged, but not in charge. And it came down to a single question that I heard so many times it's permanently etched in my mind. Does this make my life measurably better, or does it just make me feel something in this moment? Sit with that for a second. Think about the last 10 things you bought that cost more than $50. How many of them measurably improved your life in a lasting, tangible way, and how many of them just gave you a temporary hit of something? Excitement, comfort, relief, status that was gone within days. And when I first heard that question, I thought it was cold. Clinical. Where's the joy in life if you analyze every purchase like an accountant? But the more I watched, the more I understood. This person wasn't joyless. They were the opposite. They experienced deep, genuine pleasure from the things they did spend on, because those things were chosen deliberately, aligned with their actual values, and never accompanied by guilt or regret. They spent generously on experiences with people they loved. high-quality food prepared well, travel that was about exploration, not flexing, healthcare, including mental health, education, for themselves and for others, tools and systems that made their work better and their time more free. What they didn't spend on was equally telling. No impulse purchases, no retail therapy, no upgrading to the newest version of something when the current version worked perfectly. No buying things because other people had them. No spending to impress, to console, or to distract. And the result? They had more money, yes, but more importantly, they had more clarity. They knew exactly what mattered to them. Every dollar went toward that, and everything else was noise. Now compare that to how most of us live. We spend mindlessly, feel vaguely guilty, vow to do better, and then do the exact same thing again the following week. We're not intentional about our spending because we've never been intentional about our values. We don't know what we actually want, so we buy whatever the algorithm puts in front of us and hope it fills the gap. It never does. There was one day that changed me permanently. I'm going to tell you about it, and I need you to really imagine yourself in this situation. The market had a severe downturn, one of those days where every headline is screaming, every notification on your phone is red, every financial commentator on the internet is using words like crash and collapse and wipe out. The portfolio took a massive hit. I won't say the exact number because that's not my information to share, but I will tell you it was a loss in a single day that was more money than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. We're talking tens of millions. I remember my physical reaction. My stomach dropped. My hands were slightly shaky. I felt this overwhelming urge to do something, anything, to make the bleeding stop. Call the advisors, move everything to cash, sell, protect what's left. My entire body was in fight or flight mode, and it wasn't even my money. I looked across the room, expecting to see urgency, panic, a flurry of phone calls, something. What I saw was someone glance at the numbers, pause for maybe 2 seconds, nod slightly, and turn back to what they were reading. That's it. No phone calls, no emergency meetings, no dramatic reactions, no selling, no restructuring, nothing. I couldn't understand it. It felt almost irresponsible. How do you lose that amount of money and just continue with your Tuesday? When I eventually had the chance to ask about it, carefully, because I was keenly aware that this was not my place, the answer was delivered quietly and without any drama. The money was always going to fluctuate. That's what money does when it's actually working. If I reacted every time the number changed, I would spend my entire life chasing a feeling of safety that doesn't actually exist. The strategy hasn't changed, the fundamentals haven't changed, so there's nothing to respond to. Let me repeat the key part. Feeling of safety that doesn't exist. That phrase restructured my entire understanding of money, because most of us, most, are making financial decisions based on the pursuit of a feeling. We keep money in a savings account that pays almost nothing because it feels safe to see the number sitting there, stable and unmoving. We avoid investing because the possibility of loss feels threatening. We hoard cash, we over-insure, we make choices that prioritize emotional comfort over actual financial growth. And this person was telling me that the safety we're chasing is a mirage. The number in your savings account feels stable, but inflation is eating it alive. 3%, 4%, 5% per year, year after year. Invisibly, silently. Your money is losing value every single day. You just can't see it because the number doesn't change. That's not safety, that's a slow, invisible leak. The invested money fluctuates, it goes up, it goes down, it has terrible days and incredible years. It looks scary, it feels risky, but over time, over the 20, 30, 40-year periods that actually matter for building wealth, it grows in ways that savings never can. The discomfort is the price of admission, and most people refuse to pay it. They choose the comfortable illusion of safety over the uncomfortable reality of growth. And that single choice, repeated across decades, is why most people retire with far less than they need. After that day, I started investing, not perfectly, not aggressively, but consistently. And I stopped checking the numbers every day because I understood, finally, that the daily number is noise. The 30-year trajectory is the signal. Here's something almost nobody talks about when they discuss wealthy people. It's not about the money, not really, it's about time. This person was fanatically protective of their time. Not in a rude way, they were warm, present, and generous with the people they cared about, but they had an almost allergic reaction to wasted time. Every hour was considered. Every commitment was evaluated not just by what it would produce, but by what it would cost in terms of hours and mental energy. And this is where the lesson hits home for all of us, regardless of income. Most people operate inside a vicious cycle that looks like this. You trade your time for money. Then you trade your money for things that ironically cost you more time. You buy a bigger house, rooms to clean, more things to maintain, more costs to manage. You buy more clothes, more decisions every morning, more organization, more shopping, to replace things as trends change. You subscribe to more services, more passwords, more notifications, more mental overhead. Every purchase adds weight, and that weight over time becomes invisible. You don't notice it because it accumulates slowly, but it's there. It's in the 20 minutes you spend every morning deciding what to wear. It's in the hour you spend every weekend organizing the garage full of things you never use. It's in the mental bandwidth consumed by managing a lifestyle that's more complex than it needs to be. The billionaire had broken this cycle. Their philosophy was stunningly simple. Money exists to buy time, not things, time. They hired people to handle tasks that drained their energy. They invested in systems that removed repetitive decisions. They said no to commitments that didn't align with their priorities, even when saying no was socially awkward. They lived in a way that minimized friction and maximized hours spent on things that were either deeply productive or deeply enjoyable. And here's the part I need you to hear. This doesn't require $1 billion. You can apply this principle tomorrow. That subscription you never use, cancel it. That's not just $10 a month, it's the mental overhead of knowing it's there, the notification it sends, the guilt you feel every time you see the charge. That 45-minute commute, what would it cost to move closer to work? And what would you gain in time and energy every single day for years? That weekend spent shopping for things you don't need? What if you spent it learning something, building something, or resting properly so your next week is more productive? Every hour is a choice, and every dollar you spend either buys you more choice or takes choice away. The wealthy understand this intuitively. The rest of us learn it the hard way, usually when we've already traded away our best years for a house full of things we don't use. Here's something that genuinely surprised me. This person, the one who questioned every unnecessary purchase, who operated with surgical precision about spending, was one of the most generous people I have ever encountered. They funded education for people who couldn't afford it. They backed small businesses started by people they believed in. They tipped in ways that were genuinely life-changing for the people receiving it. They contributed to causes quietly without any need for recognition or publicity. At first, this seemed contradictory. How can someone be so tight about a designer watch and so loose about writing a check for someone's college tuition? Over time, I realized it wasn't contradictory at all. It was the whole architecture of their financial life made visible. They weren't careful with money because they loved money. They were careful with meaningless spending precisely so they could be meaningful with everything else. Every dollar they didn't waste on status or impulse was a dollar available for impact. The watch wouldn't change anyone's life, the tuition would. And this reframed something for me that I think most people get wrong. We tend to think generosity is something you unlock after you get rich. When I have money, I'll help people. But the people I observed who had real wealth became wealthy partly because generosity was already part of how they thought. Money was never a scoreboard. It was always a tool, and tools are meant to be used for the things that matter most. If you want to be more generous in the future, the most practical thing you can do right now is stop wasting money today. Every impulse purchase, every unnecessary subscription, every "I deserve this" splurge, and that's future generosity you've traded away for a momentary feeling. I want to tell you about absences, the things I never saw this person do, because sometimes the most powerful lessons come from what's missing. They never compared themselves to other wealthy people, not once. I never heard a single comment about someone else's house, car, portfolio, or lifestyle. There was zero interest in what other people at their level were doing with their money. Zero. Think about how radical that is. We live in a society that is fundamentally built on comparison. Social media is a comparison engine. Advertising is comparison fuel. Our entire consumer economy runs on the idea that you should look at what someone else has and feel inadequate enough to buy something. This person had opted out completely, and the peace that came from that opt-out was tangible. There was a calm, a contentment, a settled quality to how they moved through the world that I have rarely seen in anyone else, including people with far less money who should, theoretically, have far fewer reasons to be anxious. They also never talked about money as a measure of success or identity. When they talked about what mattered, they talked about freedom, impact, time, relationships, learning, legacy. Money was the infrastructure, never the destination. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I could tell you. If money is your goal, you will never, ever have enough. There's always a bigger number, always a higher milestone, always someone with more. You will spend your entire life sprinting toward a finish line that moves every time you get close. But if freedom is your goal, freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom from financial anxiety, then there is an arrival point, and it's almost certainly a much smaller number than you think it is. Working in that environment changed me in ways I'm still discovering. Let me tell you specifically what shifted. I stopped buying things to regulate my emotions. Before this experience, I was a textbook stress spender. Bad day, new purchase, feeling anxious, browse online, argument with someone, treat myself to dinner. I used spending the way some people use substances or wanted to numb, to distract, to create a moment of pleasure in the middle of discomfort. Watching someone with unlimited resources choose not to do that forced me to look in the mirror. I started investing consistently and stopped watching the numbers obsessively. Before, I would check my portfolio multiple times a day. Every dip triggered anxiety. Every gain triggered the urge to celebrate by spending. After watching someone shrug off a loss larger than my entire net worth, I understood that monitoring the daily noise wasn't engagement. It was compulsive behavior dressed up as financial responsibility. I adopted the question, does this make my life measurably better, or does it just make me feel something right now? I ask it silently before almost every non-essential purchase. I don't always get the answer right. Having the question has probably saved me more money than any budgeting app ever could, and I stopped performing wealth. I stopped trying to look like I had more than I did. I started dressing simply, driving a modest car, living well below my means, not as deprivation, but as liberation. Because once you stop spending energy on the performance, you have so much more energy for the things that actually matter. Here's something nobody tells you about living below your means. It's not restrictive, it's the opposite. When your expenses are low and your income is stable, you have options. You can take risks. You can say no to work that drains you. You can invest aggressively. You can be generous spontaneously. You can weather emergencies without panic. Financial margin is freedom, and freedom is the whole point. I know what some of you are thinking. Nice story, but I don't work for a billionaire. I'm just trying to get through the month. Fair. The circumstances are extreme, but the principles are universal. Spending intentionally instead of emotionally doesn't require a high income. It requires awareness. Start by tracking your spending for 30 days. Not to judge yourself, but to see the patterns. You will be surprised. Most people are shocked when they see where their money actually goes versus where they think it goes. Investing consistently doesn't require large sums. It requires starting. Even $50 a month into a simple index fund, done consistently for 20 years, grows into something meaningful. The math is real. The hard part isn't the math. It's starting and then not stopping. Refusing to compare yourself to others doesn't require willpower. It requires limiting your exposure to comparison triggers. Unfollow accounts that make you feel inadequate. Stop browsing stores as entertainment. Recognize that every advertisement is designed to make you feel like what you have isn't enough. Protecting your time doesn't require saying no to everything. It requires saying no to the things that don't align with what you actually want from your life. One fewer streaming subscription, one fewer social obligation you attend out of guilt, one fewer hour scrolling before bed. None of this requires $1 billion. All of it requires honesty about your own patterns and the willingness to do something different from the default. Because the default path in our society, earn, spend more, finance what you can't afford, perform a lifestyle you can't sustain, that path leads to one place: stress, anxiety, and the quiet realization at 50 or 60 that decades of hard work produced a lifestyle not wealth. The path to financial peace is the uncommon one. It's quiet. It's boring from the outside. It won't get you likes on social media, but it will give you something that no purchase ever can. The knowledge that your money is working for you instead of the other way around. The wealthiest person I ever met was also the most at peace with money, not because the money solved everything, but because they had solved their relationship with money long before the wealth arrived. They didn't spend to fill a void, they didn't perform for an audience, they didn't chase a number, they built systems, they lived with intention, and they treated money as the tool it is, in nothing more, nothing less. The mystery of money isn't how to earn more, it's why we do what we do with what we already have, why we sabotage ourselves, why we spend against our own interests, why we know the right move and make the wrong one anyway. That's the mystery this channel exists to solve. Not the mechanics, the psychology, the invisible patterns that keep smart, capable, hard-working people financially stuck. You're not stuck because you're not clever enough. You're not stuck because you don't earn enough. You're stuck because nobody ever showed you what a healthy relationship with money actually looks like. Now you've seen one. What you do with it is up to you. If this changed how you think about money, subscribe to this channel. Every video is designed to remove the confusion and show you what money really looks like when the mystery is gone. No hype, no gimmicks, just clarity. I'll see you in the next one.